Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of an art talk or art review. I'm here simply to draw a character from literature or a supernatural creature as I just have a chat and talk about the ideas and thoughts I have in the process of creating these characters. So today I will be talking about, while drawing, my version of Thumbelina. So we're all familiar with the cartoon animation from the 90s, simply titled Thumbelina, produced by Warner Brothers. And growing up in the 90s, I didn't think much of it. I just saw it as another entertaining cartoon, like any other cartoon from Warner Brothers, Disney, Nickelodeon. For those of you who grew up in the 90s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So yeah, I didn't think much of it. I was more interested in the history as I got older, and I started to understand like how well done these animations were, in that they were simply pop culture versions of mostly stories written by Hans Christian Andersen or the Grimm brothers. So those two, or three authors, I guess, because Grimm brothers, there's two of them. They were the most common of all the fairy tales that gets adapted, and Thumbelina just happens to be one of them. So what I find fascinating is that Thumbelina, according to a biographer of Hans Christian Andersen, is said to be the very first story that dealt with social inferiority or being an outcast before he wrote The Little Mermaid. So as you all know, The Little Mermaid was an example of someone who is said to have no soul, while the Prince Charming is the one that's ideal and has a soul. So it's very tragic and really depressing when you think about it, and Thumbelina is just another story like that. The way we understand today that Thumbelina is not necessarily inferior, we often see her as someone that's just simply different. So back in Andersen's time, it's a lot more depressing than we think, you know, the origins of Thumbelina. And also at that time, people had limited understanding of the animal world. So in the story of Thumbelina, for those of you who are familiar, there are other characters that are animals and insects. And Thumbelina, Andersen is said that he was projecting his own identity because he saw himself as inferior. And so he was grappling with that self-esteem issues, and that's what most young people would be familiar with. And so today, it's interesting how we see Thumbelina as more of a female empowerment story. So one scholar, Dr. Susie Steffens, she says that Thumbelina is an example of a grotesque archetype, and she writes that the grotesque character in children's literature is a necessary component that enhances our will to transcend the grotesque and desire form of redemption. And so for those of you who are familiar with Andersen's stories, he incorporates a lot of Christian principles like redemption, salvation, things like that. But now we see it as more of uplifting, and I think that's good. You know, a lot of people that read these stories see it as something more uplifting. So I try to incorporate that sense of being a grotesque, of being an outcast, and into my version, and that's why I have like bandages around Thumbelina's legs, and of course the large flower, so that it creates that sense of like size. That this is a small character with the size of a thumb. So I find that part really fascinating. So I hope you enjoyed that rendition of Thumbelina. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think that my version looks quite what you would imagine Thumbelina to be? Do you think that this is too contemporary? Perhaps I should just stick with the original depiction, sort of like a princess-looking woman. But yeah, let me know what you think. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't. Check out the other videos if you're new here. And I'll see you next time on the next art review.